Alrighty. So this should look familiar. As we were just on this page here, we can see the response that Elijah created here. For this example, we're actually going to do a slightly different set of services. So we're going to go from Google Chronicle to Carbon Black. But before we hop into that, I just want to show this component off really quick. In addition to that analyst in the loop flow, allowing our analysts to intercept, potentially an action being taken on a business critical device, we can add that item to this client level whitelist. So in this case, if we were to add a particular IP address, right, I'm just going to give it an arbitrary value for the sake of this demo, right? And in this case, it could be, John Smith's laptop. In this case, no automated response or playbook would take an action on this particular IP address. So that way we wouldn't have concerns about that, as we're taking down our own servers and things of that nature. And then I'm going to hop into Chronicle quickly to just show you the set of rules that we have here. And as you can see, the host name that we're going to be looking for in this alert is WinDevTests CB, short for Carbon Black. Give me one moment while I try to move this bar that is currently blocking my tabs here. I'm just going to minimize this, pull this down. All right. Awesome. So then here we have Carbon Black's interface currently pulled up to that exact device. As you can see, the WinDevTest CB. And we can look right now that the button for quarantining this asset is currently available, so it has yet to be quarantined. And the goal of this playbook will be to demonstrate how we can quarantine based on a Carbon Black alert. So we're going to hop back into the Shield Vision interface. And for this one, I'm not going to go the template route. While that is a fantastic feature that allows us to really quickly create a number of responses that we can assign to clients, there's also the option to create it without a template. So for this, it's going to be Google Chronicle, Carbon Black, and we're going to select no template. And for this one, it's a little bit different in our system. Rather than it being an automated scan, it's what we call an integration service. So we're going to select Google Chronicle there. And it's taken us to a very similar page to the templates page, but in this case, it's actually already configured for the client once we save this. So for the last example, we showed a automated scan trigger for this one because it's an integration service in our system. We're going to show off the integration service trigger here, and the meta keys are slightly different as it's a different service. So for this one, we're going to be looking for an IP address again, assets IP. And then for this demo, we're going to show off another card here that is a conditional card. So there's a lot of fields here that allow us to do some more granular evaluation before we make particular execution. So we're going to look at this assets IP. And for this example, we're just going to put an arbitrary value that we expect will evaluate to false. So I'm just going to put Datashield protect, since that's not an IP, it will never be equal to that as we execute this. And then it'll have a list of cards that we can execute. So we're going to go ahead and connect these two cards together. And then we're going to add the cards that we'd like to execute in both cases. So for this one, we're going to be Carbon Black quarantine. We're going to be queuing on that assets IP again. So we'll connect that to one of the branches from this conditional card here. And then for this second example, we're going to do analyst in the loop again, mostly just to demonstrate the functionality of the conditional card. And that will point to a playbook that doesn't really, it won't actually execute a particular action. It's more of just a way to bail out of this particular playbook example. So I'm just going to give another arbitrary value here. All right, and then it's just a matter of piping these together. Put back in here. So for this example, if it evaluates to true, which will be impossible in this case, as the IP will never equal this value. If it evaluates to false, we're going to have it execute this Carbon Black quarantine functionality. Now, I want to emphasize in this scenario, right, we're using a Google Chronicle to a Carbon Black quarantine instance. We have several services that do functionally equivalent behavior as far as blocking or quarantining a particular IP. Carbon Black is an example of that. We also have Defender as of right now. We just saw an example with Sentinel-1. So from here, we're going to go back to this client's page. And for this integration service, we have a slightly different UI for viewing the results rather than being a scan result, as it is not an automated scan. For this one, it's actually going to show up in a slightly different place. So there's some work going on in the back end right now. And so we expect that this will repopulate with that shortly. Just taking a quick moment here. Fantastic. All right. Now we have this automated response result. So this is the result based on our playbook. And based on this interface right here, we can already see a little bit of information about how this was executed, right? If that conditional evaluated to true, we would see right here that it would be paused because that's the status that we display for things that have triggered that analyst in the loop. So if we go, it's a slightly different UI, but it gives us a lot more information about the specific threat response result as opposed to scan results, which was the previous UI. So we can see here that it says complete. It shows us that our trigger was Google Chronicle. If we hop inside of this UI, this one has a little bit better indications of what was executed, what wasn't. So we can see here that this is highlighted in green, as that is the card from the flow that we did execute. And there's not much data as far as the other cards displaying because they did not execute in this case. And then we also have some other UI features that help our analysts more quickly, analyze these results. So for this one, I'm going to hop back into Carbon Black. We're going to refresh this interface here. So you can see in this case now, it's displaying as unquarantined assets. So it's clear that this asset has been quarantined as a result of that response execution. And in this case, we didn't have an analyst in the loop flow. So it just, when that conditional evaluated to false, he immediately executed the quarantine step. So for this demo, that sort of concludes this Carbon Black versus this Google Chronicle to Carbon Black integration. So with that, I'm going to pass it back up to Elijah, Mike, Dave to handle more of the Q&A portion.